Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham, and this week we're joined by historian and journalist Ken Coleman. Ken, it's Hump Day.
Absolutely. It's Wednesday, Tia. We're about halfway through.
Halfway there. What's happening on the show today?
Well, we have a great program, as a matter of fact, today. The Detroit Public Theater is on its 10th season, and we'll hear a conversation from the theater's co-founder about Fat Ham, the first show that's kicking off that season.
Super excited about Fat Ham. And Ken, we know you as a journalist. Of course, I've seen your work in multiple publications across the city of Detroit, but you are a well-researched historian. You give tours daily, weekly. You're touring around talking about the city of Detroit and spreading that love and that knowledge. So what historically happened in Detroit today?
Absolutely, Tia. On this calendar date, October the 2nd, one of the city's most well-known and noted, and in some cases controversial mayors, Albert Cobo was born on this day. In 1893, Cobo served as Detroit's mayor from 1950 to 1957. So that was in 1893. Fast forwarding nearly 100 years till 1967. Thurgood Marshall was sworn in as a U.S. Supreme Court Associate Justice. A lot of us know of Thurgood Marshall, and some of us know that he wasn't a Detroiter. He was from Baltimore, Maryland, and worked in the National NAACP office. But his connection to Detroit was profound. In fact, in 1948, when he was a member of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, he helped a black married couple in 1948 in Detroit be able to keep their home after white homeowners decided that they would not allow this black family that bought their home, wouldn't allow them to live in the home. The case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1948, and because of Thurgood Marshall, the McGee family, a Detroit couple, were able to keep their home. And then finally, and this is a cool one, in 1971, y'all, Soul Train debuted nationally. Soul Train, for those of you of a certain age, will certainly remember the television dance show, nationally syndicated television dance show. It debuted on October the 2nd, 1971, and the first broadcast featured several Detroiters or several people who had Detroit connections. That included on Soul Train in 1971, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Eddie Kendricks, formerly of the Temptations, and a vocal trio called Honeycomb. They had a hit called One Ads. And for those of you know Ray Parker Jr. of Ghostbusters fame, and Ray Parker Jr. on radio, Ray Parker Jr. played rhythm guitar for the Honeycomb on that broadcast. Soul Train, October the 2nd, 1971.
Super, super cool. Thank you so much for that hit of history for the day. And getting into the first segment, Detroit has been changing over the past decade. Midtown and downtown look really nice. Parks and recreation centers have been rehabilitated, but problems hurting residents have not gone away. In some ways, they've been made worse. That's because in order to have a thriving city, residents need to have middle-class incomes. And right now, that's not happening. In fact, for many neighborhoods, the trend is going in the wrong direction. Since 2012, Detroiters have been flocking to the suburbs for opportunity. And while black homeownership has been going up again, most people, proportionately, who are becoming middle class in Detroit are newer and whiter residents. So, what should be done about this, and how can we create a strong, stable middle class in Detroit for all its residents? To discuss this now, we have Ashley Williams-Clark here. She is the Vice President of the Center for Equity, Engagement, and Research at Detroit Future City, and her think tank recently produced a report on this issue. Ashley, welcome to the Metro.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. And, just being from the city of Detroit, watching some of these things unfold and then having this report to correlate and help us understand what we're seeing, it's been really, really eye-opening. So you found that the number of middle-class neighborhoods in Detroit have been shrinking over the past decade. Let's start here. How do you define middle class?
So we look at middle class based off of the national median household income. And so we look at 80 to 200% of that. And what that really translates to is incomes between roughly $60,000 to $150,000.
And what are some causes for the declines that you're seeing right now, especially in the city with your report?
Yeah, it's a really complex question and a complex answer. And I think it's helpful in some ways to go back to why we did the report in the first place. So back several years ago, we did a study and we found that in 2015, 75% of Detroiters had incomes under $50,000.
Wow.
And about a third had incomes under $15,000. And so that really inspired us to say, it's really important to look at poverty relief and alleviation, but that's not enough. We have to look more proactively at all the factors surrounding that to understand how can we really focus on moving people past poverty into the middle class. So to your point, we can have that thriving and resilient city and region. And I think in doing that, you end up not just with benefiting Detroit residents and neighborhoods, but also putting Detroit on this pathway towards more economic growth and prosperity. And so when we look at this in the city and you see that there's only 12 middle-class neighborhoods, it really presents that question of how do you invest in both those neighborhoods, but also the people within the city to grow those incomes and create places that will grow middle-class households, that will attract new middle-class households.
Right.
And when people's incomes grow, they choose Detroit to stay.
Yeah. So mostly Detroit has gotten a lot more white residents with bachelor degrees, and a lot of black families have moved to the suburbs. If you're from the area, there Southfield you'll see, and you'll also see Westland and some of the other surrounding communities of Detroit. And that's created a very unequal city as we see throughout the city. Is there a fair summary of the research that you did on this report?
It is. When we look at population over time, and everyone's been very excited about the most recent news in terms of Detroit's overall population growth. But when you look over the past 10 years, there's still the fact that we've lost about 67,000 residents, and black households are the largest driver of that loss. We've lost roughly 100,000 black residents over the past 10 years. And that does have a dramatic impact in terms of the city. And that's also why we really focusing on how do we attract black middle class households back into the city.
Because the general narrative has been decades of white middle class flight, but certainly in the last 30 or 40 years, and maybe that's sounds like that has intensified in the last decade or so. Black middle class, and I haven't thoroughly read the report, but just anecdotally, working class black flight. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
definitely. And we talk about that, right? That there is this kind of this loss of population that happens due to disinvestment, right? And so you talk about sometimes loss of population or displacement due to incomes rising. And I think in this case, it's really needing to refocus on how do you look at neighborhood strategies? How do you look at making places, to your point, that will keep people here, and we can put more reinvestment back into our neighborhoods to have that happen.
And if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Ashley Williams-Clark of Detroit Future City about a new report her think tank published on the ways the middle class is shrinking in Detroit and what can be done to change that. So in a sense, Detroit seems to be falling victim to something that's happening across the country, which is that the income gaps are growing between those with and those without higher degrees of education. The report shows that. Do you see this as something that's fair?
Certainly. In all of the research we've done, we've looked at things like growth occupations. We've looked at the different types of jobs that are growing in the city. And it still holds that having a bachelor's degree increases your wages. When we look at the jobs in our region that are growing, the jobs that pay middle-class wages, if you have a bachelor's degree, you're more likely to be in those sectors and fields. But that being said, there's still, I think this is a multiple factor, layered issue. And so as we talk about strategies for increasing incomes, it's both around how do we create more pathways for higher education? How do we look at our K-12 system to make sure that we are providing children with the foundational things that they need to be able to access higher education and compete for the jobs that are coming to our region?
So on that point, it leads me to the next question. I think you've gone a ways toward answering it, but I want to be more specific. The report, the solutions in the report speak speak to housing and jobs in a significant way. What can city government, state government, federal government, and maybe the foundation community do to help address the housing challenge where we still have a significant number of men and women who are Detroiters, who are renters, vis-a-vis homeowners? Any solutions in the report toward that end?
Yeah, and I think I'm really glad you brought up renters, because one of the things that we emphasize is the fact that Detroit is both a city of renters and homeowners. And so as we think about housing strategies, we have to think about strategies for both. And as we look at affordability challenges in our city, especially for renters, it's largely driven by income. And that's not to say there aren't other factors that influence affordability of housing, and there's certainly pieces around having safe and high quality housing. But when we look at affordability, if you can get folks to that kind of middle income, affordability improves substantially. And so one of the biggest drivers of affordability for us, for renters, is lower incomes. And so we need to be focusing on incomes as a housing strategy, among others. But tied to that, and I think on the homeowner side, it's really important to also note that we've seen some exciting things happen. You mentioned mortgages increasing, and Black home buyers have really been drivers of that.
We've seen that data.
Yeah. 2012, almost no mortgage lending. I think it was about 200, a little over 200. And by 2022, that increased to over 3,000. And so that's promising. And those mortgages are largely driven by Black home buyers. But one of the things that we've seen across our studying the housing market and mortgages is that we really need to be investing in creating more demand. So how do you think about it, not just from a physical housing perspective, but how do you invest in neighborhoods? How do you think about the quality of life challenges and opportunities to think about schools, small businesses, others?
Because it all plays a part.
It all plays a part. You want to create a place that people want to live in, they want to stay in. And so you have to think about that as a housing strategy too.
Excuse me. Once again, if you're just joining us, we're chatting with Ashley Williams-Clark of Detroit Future City. And how much of Detroit's destiny is tied up with that of the federal government? That is, if the nation decides to build a lot of homes and make college free, what kind of consequences might that have for Detroiters?
So I think as we think about the strategies for all of this, one of the things we say in the report is Detroit cannot do this alone. We have to be thinking about the role that federal government policies and funding streams can play in this, ways that we can work at the state level in support of this. But what it also requires locally is thinking about what does it really mean to center this idea of creating a middle class in Detroit? What does it mean, and how does that shift how you make your investments, your strategies, your policies, your programs, if you're thinking of it through the lens of how am I contributing to increasing incomes for Detroiters and creating these middle-class neighborhoods? And so when you bring that lens to it, that helps you think about how do you leverage those federal funding, how to use those federal funds and others.
Every role of government, every level of government has a role to play. So
yes, certainly.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Ashley Williams-Clark is the Vice President of the Center for Equity, Engagement, and Research at Detroit Future City. I want to say thank you so much for joining us here on the Metro this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. Coming up, we'll discuss Woodbridge Porch concerts. This weekend it's happening, and what makes this music event so special for the community. You all stay right there. It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham here with historian and journalist Ken Coleman this week. It's a Wednesday.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful Wednesday out there. A little crispy, but that's what October 2nd brings us, right?
It's a little crispy. For me personally, I don't want to look at my winter clothes yet or any coats or jackets or anything like that. I want to keep my shorts out and I don't want to put on a coat. But It's going to be sunny today, a high near 68. Tomorrow, mostly sunny with a high near 76, so we still are feeling that warm weather.
A little bit.
It's going to go down eventually, though. Friday, sunny with a high of 73. Saturday, 70 degrees and sunny. And Sunday, a chance of rain and 76 degrees. Sundays are for naps anyway, so that's perfect for napping this Sunday. But, Ken, we do have a really cool conversation coming up right now about a Porch concert series happening.
Absolutely. It is a very cool Porch concert coming up. It's the 4th annual Woodbridge Porch Concerts. It returns this Saturday. For the last 4 years, as you know, this concert's been carried out. It's live music from local artists with a connection to that very historic and important community. Every year, the event grows, as a matter of fact, and more businesses are participating, including Woodbridge Ale, a beer made by Brew Detroit, with hops that are grown in that community, in the Woodbridge Gardens. What's more, and as a rock fan, as a lot of us probably are in the audience, a tribute band to the MC5, the great legendary rock band, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame rock band, a tribute band called WB5 will be playing in honor. I think they'll probably be playing Kick Out the Jams, maybe others as well. They'll be part of that broadcast. Joining the show now to chat more about the 4th annual Woodbridge Porch Concerts, we have two guests with us. Vicki Bash is a neighborhood resident and a member of the board of directors for the Woodbridge Neighborhood Development Organization, and also David Nadas. Dave Nadas, is a neighborhood resident and a performer. Are you part of that tribute band? We'll talk about it.
Yep.
We'll talk about it in a few moments. Vicki and Dave, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, boy, great to have you. Woodbridge is a legendary community with stately homes just outside of the Wayne State campus. Very historic. I'm sort of a history geek, so I know a lot of that great history. Vicki, this is the 4th year for the event, and it was born out of the pandemic,
Absolutely.
COVID-19 pandemic. I'm interested. How are things going?
It's great. I mean, we've had so much community support and community involvement. As you mentioned, like all of the performing acts are either have direct ties to the community or used to live in the community or have friends that are in the community or have porches that are in the community. And it's a really great way to bring everybody together. There's these large covered porches. They're really close together. Yeah. This spans a little bit under a mile from one side to the other. And so everyone just kind of like walks around listening to music. It's a great way to like meet your neighbors, hang out.
Talking like streets like Avery
and Commonwealth.
Oh, Avery and Commonwealth. Yeah. And as you mentioned, those porches are huge.
Huge.
You could put a rock band do a rock set.
We have one of our performers has I want to say like close to 10 people in their bands, and they're gonna fit. So
yeah. Sounds like the community has wrapped its arms.
Absolutely.
Around this event. It's still very young in a relative sense, but the community is digging it.
It's digging it. We have a lot of sponsors too from the businesses that are in our community. And then any proceeds and any donations that we get in, including the sales from the Woodbridge Co-op Ale, actually goes back to the board, to Woodbridge Neighborhood Development Organization, and that is used for small home repair grants to low-income families in the neighborhood.
Great. Let me
Which
turn
is
to
really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really cool. Dave, you've been performing in this event for a while now,
right, since the beginning.
Since
that's right.
day one, which is amazing. I remember doing some of the reporting for Culture Shift, talking with you all about Woodbridge when it first started during the pandemic, and to see it grow to what it is today. Dave, talk about where you started to where it is now. The popularity is amazing to see how it's grown in its 4 years.
It's incredible. I mean, I played in the Ferndale Porch concerts, and my wife saw that and said, "Hey, that would be cool to do in our neighborhood," you know. So we do it on our porch. We host, and then I've been playing. I have an Irish band called Odd Enough. We play in the Gaelic League a lot, but this year, this idea of the MC5 came up, and thought it would be nice to put together a tribute band.
Cool.
As you mentioned, they're going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The last surviving members passed away this year, unfortunately. So we've got to keep that music alive.
Yeah, and I know there's a cool thing as well because some of the family of MC5 still lives in the Woodbridge community.
Right. My understanding is Rob Tyner's widow still lives in Woodbridge, which is cool. So
yeah, so hopefully she'll hear some music and say, "Hey, that's my late husband." But Ken, you were just talking a little bit as well about some of the community love and support that the concert series has gathered over the last 4 years, especially being born out of the pandemic. So when we think about that idea of it and creating space and community space, if you could, Vicki, go into the importance of that meeting your neighbor and getting out and talking to people that just live around you and the importance of having that again. We missed out on so much of that.
Yeah, actually, I would say, so I've lived in the neighborhood 5, almost 6 years. So Dave can probably speak to this a little bit better. It is a very tight community. People do help each other and all the neighbors. During COVID, the Facebook group blew up. People were asking each other, for things like food and trash bags and, this and that. And people would be leaving things on the porch. And so this is kind of related to that. Like you do in the evenings, if you walk down the street, everyone's hanging out on their porches. You say hi, you wave, your neighbors. And that has been amazing, both for like safety and just like that community spirit and like just, socializing and knowing who lives next to you and, all the dogs in the neighborhood and all the little kids, It's been great. And this is just an awesome way to all of a sudden be all in one place. Yeah. And you also see, people from neighboring communities, Core City, Corktown, and you're like, oh, hey guys. And like, it really is just an awesome way to like connect to people you live with. It feels small and big at the same time. I mean, it's Detroit.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us here on the Metro, we're chatting with Vicki Bash and Dave Naddis about this year's Woodward Porch concerts coming up really soon. We've talked about the MC5, Dave, and as you can tell with the glee that I have, I'm a big fan of the group. It's really the house band at the old Grande Ballroom,
right.
Not too far from here. Are you performing with the tribute band? And tell us a little bit about it, or about that performance.
I play drums. I'm playing drums with the band. Nice. It's cool. Dave Frisetto, who owns the Lexington Bar, he's our lead vocalist, which is awesome. And then we both know a bunch of musicians in the area. We both played with a bunch of musicians, and so we reached out to some folks. Lenny Grassa and his bass player Jason in the band the Needmores, they play around town. So we've been put together a pretty amazing group of musicians to do this. And we've had about 6 weeks of practice. Tonight's our final rehearsal, and then I think we'll be ready to go.
Right. Love this so much. It's just so cool. Honestly, absolutely. I love when I hear people, when I bring it up to folks and they're just like, what are you talking about? Excuse me. And I'm just saying, like, just walk through the neighborhood and you'll hear music and you'll see people. And one of my favorite things to see is the kids and the strollers and the parents pushing their kids and they're just walking and listening with the kids. And that's just one of my favorite things to see. But just talking about the community, once again, you have the community garden, the hops from the beer that's going to be brewed are from the hops grown in the community garden. So once again, talk about how that community continues to give to one another, and that is you, Vicki.
Oh my God, putting me on the spot here. Vicki, so I do not grow the hops. Do not like hoppy beers. That is
me neither, but to each his own.
But yes, we actually have several community gardens in the neighborhood, and it's from things like flowers and veggies and also hops. Those that grow the hops in the neighborhood are very, very serious about it. Mark is the Woodbridge Co-op Ale co-founder. He can speak for hours and hours about how to take care of your hops, and he does do informational things. The other awesome thing that has happened over the last 4 years is the community's really come together, and they do like cleanup of the sewers, like cleanup of the streets, cleanup of the alleys. There's just really a lot of involvement in just kind of taking care of each other. And that's been awesome. Especially like I used to live in Chicago. You don't know your neighbors, even though they're like next door to you. And this is a completely different experience.
I mean, just going through Woodbridge, I have friends now who are renters in Woodbridge. And honestly, if I'm there enough that the Woodbridge community probably knows me, because it's such a tight.
You're an honorary
neighbor because I'll park and I know they're just like, oh, there she is.
The more the merrier.
There she is. And so I just thinking about that communal space and how that's just really growing in the community. But once again, because this was born out of the pandemic and 4 years of it now, almost 5 years next year, which would be hopefully a huge celebration for you all. I know. But 4 years in, watching it grow and continue to grow. I'm going to ask this to both of you. Dave, I'm going to start with you. Just watching it continue to grow, especially with the bar's involvement and coffee shops and community hubs, wherever it may be, everyone's buying into it. So if you can't go into that idea of buying into this community celebration.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, too. I moved in 15 years ago with my wife, Carrie. We've got 2 boys. Vicki said, there's been a baby boom in the neighborhood over the last decade. It's incredible. So the kids are involved. 1 year, I'm not sure if we're doing it this year or not. 1 year we did have a kids orchestra play, which is pretty incredible.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's wonderful, and then you've got the people that have been there 30 and 40 years. You've got the people that just moved into a rental property this past fall to go to Wayne State, and everybody is coming together. And the diversity is excellent. The number of people that come out, they care about the place so much. And so it's heartwarming to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's absolutely cool. And again, it's coming up this Saturday. And do people just kind of show up there?
It's
or how does
open to the public.
It's open to the public. Wow.
You show up. It's from 1 to 6 p.m. on the porches, and then it continues on at both of the Woodbridge pub and the Lexington bar. There's going to be additional music there. There's going to be a food truck. There's going to be the cart that does the little ice cream. There's a pizza place in the neighborhood that I'm sure is going to be slinging some pie.
No question. I'm sure.
And then it's basically Avery and Commonwealth.
Yeah.
You will hear it. So
it'll probably reverberate throughout the other sections too. Well, certainly Vicki Bash, who is a neighborhood resident and a member of the board of directors for the Woodbridge Neighborhood Development, and Dave Nantis, who is a neighborhood resident and will be performing on Saturday. We thank y'all for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Take care.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham here with journalist and historian Ken Coleman. And Ken, after that last conversation, truly, if you all have the time, if you have the patience and the energy, park your car a little further away. If you're not from the Woodbridge community or in this area, it's really, really fun just to get out and experience it and just be around other people who are enjoying the same thing you're enjoying. Once again, we don't get to talk to our neighbors enough, and we don't get to say hello to folks enough. So this is one of those things, Ken.
Yep.
Truly, we should have this in almost every neighborhood. I think so.
Absolutely.
There's an artist in every neighborhood.
It's how you strengthen and rebuild and reinvigorate and keep communities alive.
Are you a musician, Ken?
No, I'm not, but I listen to a lot of music and I respect them. Interestingly enough, real quick, 5 seconds. I did take guitar lessons for the first time this past spring. I want to kind of get back on that this fall. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'll get the bass going, and then we'll get a band going.
We'll put the band together.
Yes, we will. I love that.
Yeah.
Coming up, the Detroit Public Theater just started its 10th season. We'll hear a conversation about the first show that the theater is debuting this year. Stay right there. It is the Metro on 101.9 WDET-FM. I'm Tia Graham here with Ken Coleman, historian and journalist. Ken.
Great to be here, Tia.
Yeah, and we're about to get into a conversation about a production, a show that's coming up. But I think about the production of all the work that you have to do in order to produce some of the historical pieces, and some of those tours. While we have you here, we got a little bit of time.
Yep.
Talk to me about going into those tours. How do you prep to do a tour? How long how do you go through all of it?
No, I appreciate the question. So, got 3 tours coming up this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and each of them have their own sort of life. Some of the tours are Detroit focused, and so it's about historic sites, putting some of the music and the automotive history in there.
Yeah.
Then I'm fortunate enough to be leading some tours now we've got cruise ships coming in on the Detroit River.
Who knew?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you've got people coming in from throughout the country and throughout the world. And all they really kind of know, although there's nothing wrong with it, all they kind of know is Motown, and they know that y'all build cars. So I try to take them to spaces, lots of great murals in the city now, murals all over the city, tall and small. So an element of some of the tours recently have just been the outdoor murals throughout the city. Another sort of thing that's developed is what I call African American life in Detroit.
Yes.
So it's seeing Second Baptist Church, the state's oldest congregation, founded in 1813.
Wow.
1836.
Still,
1836.
wow.
Before Michigan was a state. And it's going to the Burwood Wall in northwest Detroit, this physical wall that was a symbol of race discrimination in northwest Detroit beginning in 1941. So we put all of that together, and I've been fortunate that there are lots of family reunions, homes of worship, businesses who have people coming in for meetings, and they just want 3 or 4 hours. And you talked about the time, about 3 or 4 hours to do a tour. Yeah. So it's been great work.
I've always been fascinated to learn a little bit behind the scene work of how you research all that and get into it. So thank you for the backstory and how you curate those tours. But we do, once again, have something kicking off really soon here with the Detroit Public Theater.
Absolutely. And as I get to, I lost my spot. Give me a second on the rundown.
Sometimes that happens with live radio, guys.
Yeah,
you get to chatting, you get to talking, and before you know it.
Well, I got excited, girl.
Talking history.
The Detroit Public Theater just kicked off its 10th anniversary season with a fresh new look on Hamlet, right? We all read Shakespeare when we were children. Yes. It's a version of Shakespeare that brings the play to a backyard barbecue. Oh. Wow. One that has a lot in terms of what backyard barbecues are in Detroit. That sense of representation has been a big part of the theater's success over the past decade. Our own WDET's Ryan Patrick Hooper has put together, and he sat down with the Detroit Public Theater co-founder, Courtney Burkett, to learn more about the show that's called Fat Ham.
It is a hilarious 90-minute comedy. It's a Pulitzer Prize-winning play written by James Imes. It is a spoof on the story of Hamlet. So it takes place in the backyard, a backyard barbecue of a family that is in a very big moment of transition where Juicy is the main character, and his father is recently deceased, and his uncle has married his mother. So it is the story of Hamlet retold with a contemporary spin, and it is really funny and also deeply profound. But it's a really good time. It's a backyard barbecue. It's a party, and we hope everybody comes out and sees it and has a great time.
Yeah, it's Hamlet, but Juicy, Black, queer, young lead. Is visited by his father's ghost, and the father's ghost says, "Yeah, avenge my death." But it's a little more. I don't know. Hamlet always felt bigger than that necessarily. This feels like, oh my God, like you're in a backyard in Detroit or something, and this is happening.
Absolutely, yeah. It feels much more approachable, right? So the language sounds more like how we speak. So it's the same story. It's just told through a different lens, through a much more contemporary, modern, hilarious lens.
representation has become a major focal point in film. It's become a major focal point in theater. We're in a majority black city. What does that look like for the actors that are in Fat Ham, and what does that look like for the audience that comes to see this?
Well, we're very, very fortunate at Detroit Public Theater because we have an incredible audience, and Detroit is a black city. We do a lot of stories on our stage that are written by black playwrights and employ black actors and tell stories through that lens. And so it's really exciting to have a black audience that sees themselves reflected in this work and is passionate about this work and is engaged in what's happening at Detroit Public Theater. So I feel really privileged to be able to be producing in this environment. I think there's a lot of regional theaters out there who are trying to lean towards being inclusive and trying to tell more diverse stories, but oftentimes black audiences haven't felt welcomed into those spaces. And so we have worked really hard since we opened to create a space where everyone feels welcomed and everyone sees their lives reflected back at them on our stage. And because we are in a black city, oftentimes our stories are about black families or about black people. So it's important to us that everyone feels welcome in this space and that this space is reflective of the community that we're producing in and that our work is reflective of that community as well.
I've gone to see a lot of Detroit Public Theater shows over the years, and it's always a lot of fun to see what the stage design is because you guys switch it up a lot. I've never seen that theater look the same or be seated the same twice. What can people expect when they walk into Fat Ham?
Well, it's a party. It's a really good time, and the space, transforms a lot of different ways. I don't want to give too much away, but if you're familiar with Hamlet, you know that there might be some ghosts, and so there's a lot of stagecraft. There's a lot of surprises. But when you come in, it looks like a good time. It looks like a good time's going to be had. We have the family runs a barbecue joint, and so they are actively barbecuing. They're having a family celebration, and we've got grills going all over the space. We actually even have some scents in the space. So the scents of the barbecue and of the grill are coming to life. So we really try to make it an immersive experience for everyone in all kinds of different ways, and sometimes that means essential oils.
All right, we're back on the Metro. Ken Coleman, guest co-hosting with Tia Graham, our regular host. In sports news, great news yesterday. The Detroit Tigers beat the Houston Astros 3-1 in Game 1 of the American League Wild Card Series. It was a lot of drama at the end of the game. The Tigers were up 3-1. Houston loaded the bases, but the Tigers were able to get out of it for a victory and a 1-0 lead in that first wild card series. More great news in the sports realm. The Detroit Red Wings in preseason hockey beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 2-1. So we are on a roll, y'all. The Lions won on Monday. The Tigers and Red Wings were victorious yesterday.
Doing pretty good for those who are going to be at work this afternoon, like most of us. The Tigers play at 2:32, that first pitch today against Houston Astros. Really looking forward to that. If they win, they're moving on. And I'm telling you now, if the Tigers do go and make it far, go to the World Series, even get close, I'm getting a tattoo. I'm getting an Old English D tattoo. It's happening. Yep, so the tattoo artists out there, if the Tigers make it to the World Series, I'm getting an Old English D tattoo.
You're probably going to have to stand in line for that.
Yeah, probably.
But no. If Tia Graham makes the call, I imagine that
I'm telling you now, they'll put me at the bottom of the list. They're like, oh, Lord, nope. Send her home. No. Coming up.
You're playing yourself short.
Coming up, the Pistons were really bad last year. Will that be the case this season, too? We'll speak with a Pistons reporter about that and what they've been doing in the offseason to improve. That's coming up next. On 101.9 WDET FM, I am Tia Graham here with journalist and historian Ken Coleman. Ken, we were just talking about sports. We love the fact that Detroit is truly becoming a sports town, or at least known as a sports town again.
Well, we always have been. There are times when, things aren't going as well for the Big Four I call them the big four major sports.
Yeah.
Basketball, hockey, football, and baseball. But we're doing pretty good right now.
We're doing all right. Yeah, we're doing okay.
Trying to get better.
Exactly. The hope is there. The hope is alive. And the Tigers are good right now, which feels great. The Lions are good. They're fun to watch, but the Pistons. A lot of folks are wondering if the Pistons are even going to be worth following and talking about this season. Still a very young squad, the Pistons have a lot of work to do. Recently, the team hosted its Media Days, which gives everyone a good preview of the upcoming season. So, what are the expectations for the team this season? Omari Sankofa II is the Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. Omari is here. He's also the co-host of the Pistons Pulse podcast, which you can follow online as well. Omari, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for mentioning the pod, and thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, of course. I follow along with the pod.
Listen to that voice. I think he's a double threat, writer and Brock.
Oh, wait. Double that, triple threat. That's
Triple
a Spartan
threat.
right there.
There you go.
It's my
There you go.
Spartan homie
Oh,
right here.
all right. Well,
Let's
there
go.
it is. There it is.
Right.
There
That's
it
how we
is.
roll.
Yeah.
All right, so Pistons Media Days were earlier this week. What were some of the biggest takeaways? What stood out to you?
So the team's in an interesting spot, obviously, coming off of the season that they had, which we probably don't need to recap too much, but it wasn't a good year. And they have a new president with Trajan Lane, and they have a new head coach with J.B. Bickerstaff, but essentially still the same core as last season, where you have Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Duran, all their recent draft picks. So there's almost like two paths there's walking. There's the players saying, we can't do last season again, right? Like, that's done. You have vets that they like, and Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. And, it seems like the synergy player-wise is pretty good, and they're just like, we can't do last season again, right? Like, we're ready to move on, learn from that, gain some respect. But Trajan just came in. I mean, he was hired like a month before the draft, I think, and he pretty much had to come in and immediately form a staff, and then immediately, handle the draft and then free agency. And it was just,
it was like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, it was like bang, bang, bang for a while. And he still has to get to know this roster, right? Like he has to get some actual data and, some knowledge on these guys. And, it's different, of course, with Cade not being in year 4, but he missed his sophomore season, so he's been healthy and whatnot. So overall, there's I would say a sense of progress, right? But also they don't want to set expectations just because everybody else is due, and it's like, let's see what we have before we start to set expectations and really begin to speed this thing up. So kind of two paths at once, if that makes sense.
And I just want to stick with the young players again, because it's a young team, we know, just like you were just talking. And I just want to know about how they're feeling right now, because you talked about no one wants to talk about the past. No one wants to talk about last season. They want to go forward. So with this young team, is there a lot of hope, and there's a lot of wanting to do good this year? So what's the hope like with them?
I think there's optimism.
Yeah.
I think there's a sense of like you've gone through the worst, right? Like it can't be worse. So maybe there's something freeing in that. We've already gone through the gutter last season. We know how it feels. It was awful, and ideally you grow from that. So I would say that that's where they are. Really, it's just growth. It's just moving on. We're not kids anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Cade just signed his rookie extension. So he's locked in through the next 6 years or so. It's just progress, right? It's just wanting to turn the page forward, wanting to put a product on the floor that I think fans could be proud of, because fans really tried to hold them accountable last season between the team chants and everything else. It was very much this thing needs to get going, right? Like, we can't have this.
It was so real to watch that unfolding on social. Everyone's just like, yeah, this is it. We're not taking this anymore. Ken.
Well, I was rocking my Detroit Pistons
yesterday
warm-up jersey. So I got my days wrong on that. But to the point, and you cover both the Pistons home and away. So you're covering all 82 games. What's striking to me when I've gone to Piston games over the last couple of years, people are still going to the games. I don't know how they rank it. I don't know how the Pistons rank in attendance, but there is a lot of love. I think some of it is there are a lot of us who are Detroiters who have felt really good about the team being back in the city. Really sort of the first team back. Well, not the first team back, but when they came back, they hadn't been here in 40 years. Played in Pontiac, and then Auburn Hills. Do you, and as a Detroiter, do you feel that? Is that something? Am I wrong on that?
No, not at all. Like I remember when I was younger, like I go to Pistons games with my parents and whatnot, and it takes 30 minutes to get to Auburn Hills, and then it takes an extra 20 minutes to get into the parking lot, and there's nothing to do before or after the game unless you like Applebee's, and it was just and I used to ask my parents why the hell are they out here? Like the Lions are downtown, the Tigers are downtown, the Red Wings are downtown. Why aren't the Pistons downtown? And of course, you talked about how the city was, and back in the day, and this and that, and it all makes sense. But I definitely think there's a lot of excitement with them now being back, and it kind of helps that Midtown and downtown have been built up, and you can make a full day out of it. Like you may be able to catch a Lions game during the day and then the Pistons at night.
And we've seen that situation happen.
Yeah, Lions are on at 1 p.m. You just walk across the street, get to the LCA. Maybe you have a pregame bite to eat. But you can make like an event out of it.
You really can.
And with that, like attendance was pretty good last season. It was like middle of the pack across the league. If you have like the Lakers or somebody in town, it's going to be packed. And if it's a Saturday night or Friday night game, it's probably going to be mostly full. And traveling around, there are cities that don't support teams when they're bad. And people will deny this, but I used to go to the Palace when the Pistons were bad. I was in college. I could get a ticket for like $8 if they were playing Orlando or somebody. And it's like 45 minutes driving there and back. Nobody was going to Auburn Hills when the Pistons were bad.
No.
Like those crowds were so much worse than the crowds are now, when they're actually worse now than they were then. And that's because they're downtown and people want to be downtown.
There's a lot of excitement in that area, and then that helps the team. There's been a lot of big trades around the NBA in recent days. Are the Pistons making any moves?
I don't see any moves at this point. They do have an open roster spot, and maybe they make another signing or something there if they feel like they need more point guard depth. But I would think that they're probably going to wait a good 30, 40 games, like get a real good feel for the roster, and then from there evaluate. Like what do we do next? Because Tim Hardaway Jr. is on his last year of his contract. Malik Beasley's on a 1-year deal. So you have some vets that could be moved potentially, just with them being expirings and guys who could help playoff caliber teams. So that's a little ways off. I think right now they very much just want to see what the roster looks like and then figure things out from there.
Do you realistically see them making a playoff run in the East?
Realistically is a loaded word.
Right.
I think in the East, it's within like the bounds of possibility, just because once you get past like the 7th or 8th team, like there's a pretty steep fall off, so you could get into the play-in and with like a losing record. But I mean, this is a team that won 14 games last season, so you don't want to say they're going to win 20 more games and this and that. And I don't want anybody saying, well, Omari said this or that.
That's right.
That's why I dare not even put it exactly. No way. We don't have no predictions. We just hope for the best. We hope for growth. That's about it. So before we let you go, Omari, the Pistons are practicing at Wayne State this Saturday. They're going to have a public practice and a few other things, but going to the public practice and just going to, once again, the feelings, not the I don't care what the feelings. How are people feeling about this upcoming season? So let's talk about this practice that's happening at Wayne State. Are you going to be there?
I'll be there.
Yeah. And what can the public expect from those type of events?
I think it's just the general excitement of seeing the guys for the first time. This is not really a new team, but you have a new front office and you have a new coaching staff. So I think there's excitement for the fan base of just, like it's with the players, right? Like last season was bad, so now we can move forward. Ron Holland, I think, is an exciting rookie that people will enjoy watching. You have all the young guys, Duran, Ivy, fun guys to watch. So it's just cool, just a free event for fans who may not go, especially ones who may not even get to a game, just to come in and see their favorite players. So that's always fun.
Yay!
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're gonna have you back, of course, throughout the season to get updates, and we're gonna have to have you on the phone a few of those times because I know you're not gonna be here. But Omari Sankofa II is the Detroit Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. Omari is also the co-host of the Pistons Pulse podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and good luck this season.
Appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for the Metro, October the 2nd, 2024. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. The show is also available on YouTube if you like listening that way. Today's show has been produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. And certainly our great engineer is Nate Bender, and the music is produced by Sam Bobian and Will Sessions.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.